I've been forced to tell people this story my whole life. When I was 5, my parents went out one evening and hired a babysitter. The woman they hired was very nice to me from what I can remember until I went to sleep. I woke up to her standing in my bedroom doorway, smiling like a crazy person. I started crying, and she told me she was sorry and left the room. I fell asleep crying. I assume it was hours later when I woke up again to her sitting in a chair at the end of my bed. I screamed as I saw her face, which she had twisted into a crazy expression. I began to cry again, and she just held the expression. I covered my head with my blankets and was shaking uncontrollably until my parents came home. I was pretty sure I heard them talking to the woman, and that's when I took my head out of the covers. The woman was still sitting in the chair, making the same disturbing expression. I screamed and cried, and my dad came running into my room. He was livid as you can imagine, and I heard him yelling at the woman as he kicked her out of the house. My parents have always told me she was just trying to scare me. But why? Someone of her age. Why would she do that? I was 16 years old, and this was my first babysitting job. I was watching a 3-year-old girl at my mom's friend's house, just down the street from mine. It was pretty easy, because when I arrived, the little girl was already in bed, and the parents were going on a date night. The mother and father both told me over and over to not let anyone in. I didn't ask questions and just told them that I wouldn't. They were to be gone for at the most 2 hours, and after 30 minutes, I heard a knock at the front door. This was a strange old house, and I became very nervous. I walked over to the door and looked through the peephole, but it was black, which I was sure meant that someone was covering it from the other side. I heard another knock, and this time I asked, "Who is it?" Silence. I looked through the peephole and it was clear. Nobody was standing there. I became scared and started to call the mother on my phone. Unbelievably, she didn't answer. I walked through the living room and was standing in front of the couch, confused by the mother not answering, when out of my peripheral vision, I saw someone standing at the back door. As you can imagine, my heart stopped, and I turned my head and looked. A man stood there. He motioned for me to come and open the door, but I, of course, stood there in utter shock and terror. I slowly shook my head. Just then, the mother called back. I moved out of the view of this man and answered the phone. "Emily, there's a man at the back door." I heard the mom gasp, and the father grabbed the phone and he said, "Do not let him in, no matter what he says." I assured them I wouldn't, and when I looked back through the door frame, I saw that the man was gone. I felt relieved for the briefest of moments before I heard the front door knob start to move. I cannot even describe the fear. I shouted out in a very scared voice, "Go away." Then, the man said in a sadistic, crazy-sounding voice, "I'm her father." I didn't know what to do or what to think, so I just went upstairs and sat in the little girl's bedroom with her. The mother walked into the bedroom about 10 minutes later and scared the hell out of me. Apparently, the man was actually the girl's real father, and they told me he had mental issues. This happened 23 years ago, and I still have nightmares sometimes. I wanted to be a babysitter when I was 17, and somehow, My parents thought it would be a good idea at the time. I babysat for the neighborhood kids for a while, and everything was fine. But one day I was watching a little boy that lives 2 doors down. We were playing video games when his mom and her friend came into the room and asked me if I would be willing to watch the friend's daughter the following weekend. I immediately agreed when she said she would pay me $100 for just that one Saturday night. The week passed, and I was at her front door on Saturday night, ready to earn that money. The lady's name was Lauren, and she was very nice. Her house was old though, and kinda creeped me out. It looked like crap on the outside, and the inside wasn't much better. She had a futon in her living room with stains and tears, and there was garbage lying around everywhere. She told me her daughter was already asleep, and asked me to be quiet and try not to disturb her. And she said I should just watch TV until she gets home from her date. She left, and I sat on her old, uncomfortable futon and turned on the TV. The TV didn't have any channels I could watch. Snow was all that I had. I felt weirded out by this, as she specifically said I should watch TV. But I did notice that she had a DVD player hooked up, with no DVDs in sight. I pushed eject disc on the player, and the movie inside was The Silence of the Lambs. I hadn't seen it before, but I heard of it and knew that it was a horror movie. I wasn't down with watching a scary movie in this weird house at night, so I just sat on the couch and played on my phone. After an hour or so, I looked around and noticed something weird. There were no pictures on the walls. Every house I babysat at had pictures of the kids all over the house, and this place had none. I got up and walked around, and I started to feel really weirded out. I just had a bad feeling. I walked down the hall and opened one of the doors, the bathroom. I opened the next door. It was the lady's bedroom, I assumed, because of the bed and adult woman's clothes scattered around. I walked a few feet to the next door and opened it slowly. The room was completely empty. I freaked out. I ran out of that house and all the way home. I told my parents what happened, and they were just as confused as me. Not long after, the lady called me screaming, and I mean actually screaming, that I had left her daughter alone. There was no little girl in that house. I babysit for my cousin's 2 kids pretty much every other Friday night, so he and his wife can have some alone time and get out of the house. Their kids are 2 and 6 months, so they have video monitors in each of their rooms, and I pretty much watch the monitors and read or watch TV. Roughly a month ago, I heard talking coming out of one of the monitors. It was a man's voice, and he kept saying over and over again, "It's okay, go back to sleep. I'm here." And I could see a figure standing over the crib in the 6-month-old's room. I freaked out thinking someone had broken in. I called the police and my cousin, and then crept up the stairs with a knife to protect myself. No one was upstairs and both kids were sound asleep. Needless to say, I was thoroughly freaked out. It didn't help that all the windows were unlocked, and they lived in a very old house, and everything creaked. When I was 15, I used to babysit for this little girl named Sarah. Her parents were the kind of people who liked to go out every Friday night, so I always babysat for them. But after what happened to us, I no longer babysit for anyone. It was a typical Friday night during the summer. I showed up to Sarah's house around 6 o'clock, and her parents left me pizza money, gave me and their daughter a hug, and took off to go out. Sarah and I were playing Candyland together and scarfing down pizza when the phone rang. I picked it up. Hello? No one responded. All I could hear was the sound of someone heavily breathing on the other end of the phone. I repeated, hello? Then the phone hung up. Wrong number, I assumed. It was now around 9:45, and Sarah had to be in bed by 10 o'clock. I tucked her into bed and turned on her nightlight and closed her bedroom door. I went and sat on the couch and started texting my friends. Within 5 minutes, I heard Sarah's door open, and Sarah comes walking out holding a stuffed animal up to her mouth, and she had huge, wide eyes peeking over it. I asked why she was out of bed. She moved the animal away from her mouth just far enough to say, "There's a man watching me from the backyard." I ran to her room and looked out through her window, but there wasn't anyone out there. As I was looking, the phone rang. We both jumped, and I ran back out and answered the phone and said hello. After a few deep exhales, he said,
"The door isn't locked."
I hung up the phone and ran to the front door and locked it. Holding the phone, shaking, I tried calling Sarah's parents, but no answer. I called the cops, and they came out to investigate, but came up with nothing. The police finally got a hold of Sarah's parents, and they immediately came home. I told her parents I wouldn't be babysitting anymore, and I went home. I don't know if that guy ever called back again, or showed up again, but all I know is that I'm done babysitting.